Hello and welcome to B&D Now, a podcast about independent game development. I'm your host, Tobiah Marks, and with me today is Jonah Wallerstein. Hey, Jonah.
Hey, Tobiah, how's it going?
Pretty good. So why do you make games?
So I make games to tell stories and craft experiences. It's the only way to satisfy this creative itch I have.
How long have you been making games? When did you start?
So I've been dabbling in games since I started learning how to program. One of my first games I created was on one of those, big calculators, like the TI-83s, if you remember those.
I do.
I made a little like Zelda ripoff kind of thing.
So when did
But
you start programming? Like, was this like last year? Was this 10 years ago?
no, I started programming in junior high.
Okay, so a little bit.
A little bit ago.
Yeah.
But I didn't start like really getting serious about making games until about a year ago.
So, what was your progression for that? Like, did you graduate high school? Did you go to college?
Yeah, so I went, so games are what really got me interested in programming. But then I realized I just kind of enjoyed programming on its own. It's just like a fun thing to do. So I learned that in high school, basically, and then went to college, got a degree in computer science, but then went to web development because there were just a lot more jobs there.
Were you making games in college?
Not really. I did take a course where we tried to make a game, but we never really completed anything. So lots of kind of experimenting, dabbling.
So you went more that traditional web development, CS route, making business applications type stuff, because that's where you thought the money was.
Exactly.
And what year was that, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. So I graduated from college in 2005, I believe.
All right. That was more true then than it was now, for sure.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. No iPhone yet and all that.
Yeah, no, the indie revolution hadn't really taken off yet. It was just starting on like Xbox Live.
Right.
All right, so then what happened a year ago?
Basically, I've been doing web development pretty much since then. And while I enjoyed a lot of parts of it, I really enjoyed my coworkers and it had some interesting challenges, I still had this creative itch and also the core reason why I got into programming in the first place. So I tried to break into the industry a few times, applied to places, but at the same time, wasn't really that excited about working at a big game company because I feel like, as a one person, like 100-person team, you're not going to have that much creative control. So I decided, screw it. I'm just going to go off and try it on my own.
Yeah,
So,
why not? If you have the way to cover your basic necessities, that's the best way to learn something.
That's right. So about 2 years ago, I half quit my job. I told my boss, hey, you're paying me a decent amount. How about you pay me half of that? And I work 4 hours a day instead of 8. And they were okay with that.
Wow, interesting. A lot of people aren't able to make that kind of deal.
I got really lucky.
That's actually a really good way to not entirely cut off from that basic level of funding to cover, your rent needs.
Exactly.
Did you find it was hard to work on 2 different companies simultaneously, like going 4 hours in one company and then switching work to indie, or did you end up working, 2-3 days a week at one and the rest on the other? How did you split that up?
It was hard in some ways, but also helpful in others, because sometimes you're working really hard on a problem and you just bang your head against it, and what you really need to do is walk away from that problem, do something else, and then come back to it. So in that way, having the two works kind of help each other, but then they can also interfere. Like if I'm got a lot of work at the web job, I don't get as much time to work on the game stuff, and so it can kind of overlap a bit.
Did you work from home on both jobs, or just?
That's right.
Okay. How did you find working at home? How did you get that sanity of wearing 3 different hats? The I'm at home relaxing hat, the I'm a web developer hat, and I'm a game developer hat.
Well, definitely working in my home is not conducive to being productive. So I try to get out of my house as much as possible. So I've always either gone to coffee shops or now I have a co-working space to go to.
Interesting. So, which co-working space? Give them a plug.
Well, they actually don't exist anymore.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
but it was the games forum here in New York. They had this. It was like the Games Fellowship, which was like a co-working space specifically for indie gamers, which was great. But I guess they didn't have enough people sign up. So
That's unfortunate. That sounds pretty awesome, though.
yeah, it was a cool concept. But luckily, everyone who was still involved when they closed down is still working in the same place. So I'm still got that same office and still working next to my buddies and all that.
Oh, interesting. Did you like just rent the space afterwards?
Exactly. Like they had basically the games forum, found different companies that had extra space to throw us gamers in there, and so we're still renting from the company that they had thrown us in with before, basically.
Awesome. So some good came out of it.
Definitely.
So are you working by yourself? Did you get involved with other people?
Pretty much working by myself. I looked around for a bit to find a team, but it's tough to find people with a similar kind of situation where they have enough time to really focus on a game without being paid.
Yeah, fair enough. So you've been working on this game now full time. You said close to a year, 2 years. What was the time frame?
A little over a year. I was kind of messing around with some other things when I first went part-time on my job. But then this last game, which I just released on the App Store, I've been working on for a little over a year, seriously.
So this is your second game or your first game?
My first game,
Okay.
at least my first game that I really, tried to polish and get looking professional and all that.
Do the whole, release thing. You got like the press kit and everything going on.
That's right.
All
That's right.
It's called Too Many Steaks. Oh, sorry, Too Many Snakes. That's Too Many Steaks. That's fine. Too Many Snakes. And your company's called Whale Food Games, if I didn't say that before. So tell me about the Too Many Snakes.
Sure. So Too Many Snakes, it's a mobile puzzle game where you play as Jesse the Mouse, who has to escape from a plethora of snakes. And you do this by using your finger to drag snakes out of the way, or aka your psychic mouse powers. Mm-hmm. And it's basically a literal twist on the sliding blocks puzzle game, which you may know of in the form of Rush Hour or Unblock Me.
Mm-hmm.
But the kind of catch here.
The square up and down lateral movements, they're all one long snake that you have to move around.
That's right. And you can twist them and turn them in all sorts of different ways. And it looks kind of cute, but it actually gets super challenging. I did not expect it to be as hard as it turned out to be.
Interesting. How have you been playtesting difficulty?
Basically, I've been taking it to a lot of local events and shows, just to watch people play the levels and things like that. Mm-hmm. Also just playing them myself. But at some point I realized that some of my levels were too hard for me to get the perfect score on. So I actually had to create a program that was smarter than myself to figure them out.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because you have the kind of puzzle game that I dream about, where you could make a program to design levels for you, since you have a perfect solution and you can step back from that.
Yeah, totally. The only issue with automatically generated levels is I feel like you lose something in the aesthetic appeal. Something about a nice level is somewhat symmetrical and, has some kind of concept. So I experimented with random design, but I actually ended up, handcrafting all 75 of the levels in my game.
Interesting. Do you ever thought of generating 500 levels and then just picking the, 20 most pretty?
Yeah, that's definitely an option. But it actually turned out that just solving a single level took a lot of computer resources. Especially the last world set, which is a 6x6 grid instead of a 5x5 grid.
Oh, yeah, I imagine that would get into it, because you're trying to solve for the fewest number of moves.
Exactly.
Yeah, I ran into a similar issue in a game that I was making, where it got exponentially harder, and after a 10-move puzzle, it basically became a week of processing time.
Yep. So I couldn't actually solve the levels with my own computer. I didn't have enough memory. So what I ended up having to do was rent the biggest memory instance on Amazon Web Services. It took hundreds of gigs of memory just to solve some of these levels.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Good use of the cloud, though.
Yeah. I was happy that that worked out.
Very
I
cool.
actually have a whole article about it. I wrote for Gama Sutra about how my algorithm works and everything that went into that level solver.
Very cool. So is the game out now or is it about to come out?
So it's out now on iOS
Mm-hmm.
and it's coming out soon to Android. I'm kind of working on that port right now, and then maybe Windows Phone after that if I can get the HTML5 converter to work right.
So you made it in. I was going to ask, what's the behind the scenes tech for it?
So I made it in this engine called Moai, which is this open
Mm-hmm.
source Lua-based engine.
I'm a huge fan of Lua, so I know Moai.
Nice.
I actually haven't made much in it, but I guess it's most known for Broken Age.
Exactly, and that's what kind of got me hooked on it. It's like, oh, cool, Double Fine. I love them. They must be doing cool stuff, so I'll use their stuff too.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
I love the Lua language. It's so easy to work with.
it's very elegant. It's just very simple, and you know, yeah, I agree. It's a beautiful language.
So,
But the oh, sorry.
no, I was gonna say. So you started in this Moai, you started making it, and then you went just to Apple first. Like, why didn't you try and go for simultaneous release?
Basically, to increase my chances of an Apple feature, which I screwed up anyway, so it doesn't even matter. But also, I wanted to concentrate on just getting that one done, getting something out there.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that's really polished, and then once that's out there, work on getting the other stuff out. But
So how much are you pricing it? What's the monetization?
so I'm trying a kind of free to try model. So the first 12 levels are free,
Mm-hmm.
and if you enjoy those, then there's one in-app purchase to get all the rest of the levels.
So it's basically a premium experience, but you just have that one trial paid, right?
Exactly.
And how much are you charging?
So it's $199 to unlock the levels,
Mm-hmm.
but I also have this undo button, which you can, it's another $199 if you want to unlock that, or get them both for $299. What a deal!
So what's the undo button do? I mean,
It
obviously it
allows you,
undoes, but like,
right.
why is that compelling?
In a lot of the later levels, it gets really tricky so basically to get the gold star, which is what's really challenging this game, you have to solve the puzzle in the minimum number of moves possible.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when you're trying to figure out that best solution, you'll get to a state which you think you're close, but then you're trying to figure out the last few moves, and it can get really annoying if you have to keep working up to that state. So the undo button kind of lets you try something and then see, oh, that doesn't work, so undo a few times, then try something else. It basically helps with the later levels a lot.
Very cool. So did you do all the art as well, or did you get like a contractor?
I got a contractor. So art and sound, I found people to do for me. Basically, through this games forum, I met people who was like, "Oh yeah, I've got an artist who doesn't have anything to do right now. You can totally pay him to do your work." So that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, awesome. No, the game looks really, really good. It has that nice polish, cell shaded look to it.
Thanks.
So
Yeah.
you released it. What's the response been?
Not great. I mean, no, the response, like all my reviews are great. Lots of people who play the game really like it, but it's just the discoverability is just
Do you
killer.
have analytics in the game?
I do.
Good. So like
Yep,
you find like retention's good, with your conversion's good. You're just not getting the eyeballs on it.
not getting the eyeballs really. That's the main issue.
All right. So what's your plan to get eyeballs? It's the
So
next step, right?
right. So the next step, I mean, one plan is just to like, okay, I've got a first game out there. Time to start thinking about the other one. But I've got a few other tricks I'm going to try. So definitely getting the Android version out there is going to be good. But I'm
Yeah.
also going to get an HTML5 version out there. And I'm going to be working with this. They're kind of like an ad company where they kind of distribute. They have a distribution network where they put games out there into other people's websites and they stick ads in there. So I'm going to try and work with them to maybe have a web version of my game with some ads in there, but then also use that to funnel people to the app version. So have some clear buttons that says, get this on your phone right now.
That's
Things
interesting.
like
A
that.
lot of games do the reverse. They'll like have a popular web game that doesn't monetize well, and then they'll make the mobile app that makes the money. But you're thinking, okay, I'm going to make this HTML5 game not to try and be an ends of profitability, but as a funnel into the mobile version.
Exactly.
How hard is it for you to convert the game into HTML5, Lou? I know you probably have a lot of experience with it as a web developer.
So it's all within this game engine. So one of the reasons I chose Moai is that you can write the game once in Lua and then compile it to iOS, Android, and HTML5.
Oh, I didn't
Supposedly.
realize Moe did HTML5. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's like a recent thing they added. I haven't tried it out yet, and some things in Moai can get a bit tricky to get working. So hopefully it's not a difficult conversion, but supposedly it does that.
So let's talk about what kind of people you're trying to reach. Who's the audience for this game?
So whenever when I show them the game and they ask me like what my target demographic is, I always say it's one person. It's myself. So I want to reach people like me who enjoy these thoughtful puzzle games that really don't require quick, actions or anything. Just to, a more Zen-like experience of slowly moving things around and figuring out each puzzle. So puzzle solvers, basically.
You do have that art style for that, all ages, friendly to younger demographics, older demographics, not zombies or violent or anything like that. But you do have the story that, you got a psychic mouse. It's like, okay, I can kind of buy that, but it definitely gets to that a little weirder than you see your typical all audience game. Have you got any feedback on that people like it? They just kind of don't even think about it.
I guess they don't even think about it. I mean, lots of people don't really read the story at all and don't even notice that when you're moving the snakes, it's like the mouse doing this little psychic move to hypnotize the snake to get them to move. So,
Yeah, I guess it's simple enough to understand, even if you don't care about the fact that it's a psychic mouse.
Right. But I like having those little things in there for the people who are paying attention to be like, oh, this is kind of odd.
It's also
Definitely.
nice just from like a feedback point of view of, oh, my hand is touching the screen right now, so the mouse is making a funny position, and it's just that subtle feedback helps get that last little bit of polish to make the game feel better.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I definitely spent a lot of time trying to, get those little tweaks and just, little pieces of feedback. Things like you can notice if you move the mouse around, the snake's eyes actually kind of follow it a little bit and kind of watch it, and little flicking of tongues and things like that. I really feel like those little details help a game come alive.
So speaking of little details and changes, since you've started playtesting it from before release to now, what's the biggest thing that changed about your game design?
So I spent a lot of time kind of working on those first 12 levels because I needed that to be a really smooth experience. I wanted to get people into the game, start them from very basics and just ramp them up into the difficulty. So that's what I've kind of worked on the most through playtesting is watching people go through those levels and seeing where they're getting stuck, what lessons aren't they learning, and just making sure that's a very smooth experience.
Makes sense. What about funding? You're entirely self-funded?
That's right.
So how they seem to be investing a lot. I mean, you got paying for office space, you have contractors, and you're just doing this all based on the fact that you're still working 4 hours a week as a web developer or 4 hours a day as a web developer?
Exactly. I mean, I have some savings from when I was full time, which I've definitely taken some from, but everything. But I'm pretty much able to support myself in other ways just from those 4 hours a day.
That's a great position to be in because it's definitely a good game. It's just a matter of you got to keep expanding more content on it, getting it out there, getting it in front of people. It is a hard thing to do to be noticed. So it takes a lot of iteration.
Yep.
Doesn't matter how good the game is at launch, right? Just got to promote it.
Yep.
I have to bring up, though, your trailers.
Yes.
and I know, like, if anyone wants to search me, you can find a similarly embarrassing trailer that didn't work out for me. Um, I think it might be better to not necessarily tell the details because I think people out there should go and watch it. But the trailers for the game, I would say, are very comical and involve live action. So, like, how did that thought process come about? Like, what made you think this is the way I'm going to motivate to get people to get the game?
Well, so I've been thinking of how am I going to get my game noticed? With all these other mobile apps out there, PR didn't seem like a good way to spend money. It's a cool game, but it's not. It didn't feel like unique enough that it would get a lot of press attention. So I thought, well, there's not that many games who do live action trailers. So I was thinking, like, here I am in New York. What if I did something funny with a guy in a mouse suit, kind of running around the streets of New York with people in snake suits? And that just felt like a much more unique way to spend money on.
Did you like have friends of a camera? Did you have to like rent equipment? Like how much effort did you put into these videos?
I actually put a lot of effort. I found through another friend, I found a videographer who had experience with this and had all the equipment and stuff. So I hired him to film it, and I actually wasn't originally planning on doing any acting in it, but the guy who was going to play the mouse ended up not being able to show that day. So I put on the mouse suit, and that's me in the video.
It is definitely really funny. Did you get like any response from it? Any press from it?
No press. I got a lot of good response from friends, and I feel like it really helped in kind of in helping the social, networking part of this, my marketing, like with my friends sharing it and stuff. I felt like they were more likely to share it because it was me running around and that kind of thing. But I also tried doing some Facebook advertising with it, and YouTube advertising just didn't really convert very well. But oh well, it was fun to do.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I had a similar thing when I did a live action video for my game Tap Party.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if anyone out there wants to search it, I don't recommend it. But I ended up like recording, these videos and then realized, well, this is probably not worth my time. But they were so fun to do. Like highlights of my day to like make it, but maybe not the best 8 hours, use.
Right.
Are you gonna like have those videos? Like when like the Google Play Store has a video that you can put on. Are you going to use that, or are you going to try and make a separate gameplay video?
I might try and use that. I haven't really done much research yet as to what like normal for the Google Play Store. I'd love to use one of those, but I don't know if they have similar restrictions to Apple. Because Apple has video
they're
now.
very strict about. I know Apple's very strict about it. Google tends to be less strict on most rules. But you do have gameplay in there, but I don't know if it needs to be 100% gameplay.
Yeah, so maybe I'll try it out and see what they say.
Interesting.
But for the Apple one, I had to make a whole separate video of just showing some gameplay, basically.
All right, so I asked this question to everybody. If I gave you a time machine and you can go back a year and a half, 2 years, and you had 30 seconds to tell yourself something, what would you say?
Let's see. Year and a half, 2 years. I think I would just say, because that's about the time that I, half quit my job. I would just say, good job. You made the right decision.
Keep with it. They'll alleviate some of that panic you had.
Yeah, exactly.
What about like mistakes? What's the biggest mistake you think you've made in the last 2 years?
I guess one mistake was kind of having a little higher hopes than I should have. I was telling myself from the beginning, this is mobile, it's a tough market. This is probably not, no one does well with their first game, but I was still somewhat disappointed in the amount of downloads I got. Actually, no, one big mistake I did make was I kind of screwed up my chance to get featured.
Oh, you mentioned it. I totally glossed over it. How do you think you screwed that up?
Basically through my communications with Apple. So I told them a month beforehand, and this is generally, what you're supposed to do is supposed to email Apple a month before you're planning to release your game and tell them, hey, I got this game coming out. Here's a trailer. I'm planning to do some marketing so that they know they can look over your marketing material and hopefully get you featured about the same time you release. But then I ended up having to resubmit the build because I added the video, and then the new build wasn't approved by the time I wanted to release, and it was just this kind of miscommunication stuff that if I had just maybe been a little more patient, held off another month or something, I might have had a better chance of getting featured. But it's all in the past now.
Interesting. One thing I would say though is it's never too late. There, featuring happens all the time after a game's been out. Just keep making an update. Hey, I just added 20 more levels, 50 more levels, and they'll look at it again. And that's not just with Apple, of every store too.
Nice.
So don't give up. It's not about launch date. I think that's one of the big myths of the indie development is that you make it or break it in your launch, because pretty much if a game fails, its biggest weekend will be launch weekend. But games that do well, launch weekend is not their biggest weekend by far.
Interesting.
So and that's not to say that you would have instantly had success and will go up from there, but most games have that lull and that ramp up over time. So don't give up too early.
Thanks.
All right,
I think another sorry.
No, go right ahead.
I'm just going to say another mistake I think I made is I didn't put enough social features in there. I know that's such a big thing with mobile games is getting social
reasons
features
for people to talk to their friends.
Exactly.
Interesting. Have you thought about adding some social features?
I have. I've thought about recently read an interesting article about a guy who added a share feature instead of you could either to buy some in-app purchase you could either pay for it or share something on Facebook, and that would unlock it as well. So I may do that for my undo button or something like that.
Interesting. Got to be careful. Apple has a policy about actually Facebook too. About rewarding people per message.
Oh, interesting.
So you can actually, if you get banned from Facebook pretty easily for saying, we will give you this reward if you post this message as a one-to-one transaction. Because, right, you got to have, the message has to have value, because no one wants junk on their timeline, right? You have to, I have to post not because I'm getting an external reward, but the post itself is its own intrinsic reward. Have you played Trainyard?
Yes, I love that game.
One of my favorites. And they do a really good job of, you solved the puzzle in this many moves in this way. Here's a little video or a solution of how you did it that you can share with your friends. And so, I am so proud of myself that I was able to solve this in 11 moves. Let me post it on my wall. And now it's not just I'm getting rewarded, if you post to your wall, you get 10 coin. It's, hey, good job for doing it in 11 moves. Post to your friends and brag how you were able to do it in 11 and they can't do it in 11 yet.
Interesting. That might work well, actually.
It can add a little bit more system to it, but something like that is more engaging social features.
Right.
Or at least what I've seen.
Yeah.
All right.
Good to know.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about games we've been playing lately. This is the part where I normally talk about the game I've been playing, and this is where I also have to admit to the listeners of the podcast that I've made a mistake. I reactivated my World of Warcraft account. The new expansion came out. I wanted to try it. I haven't even gotten to try it yet because the server's been having some issues, plus my own time. But I activated my account. I did it for a month or two, and I'm going to play the content. I'll get to level 100, and then I'll stop playing again for another year. But man, I love Blizzard games. And coupled that with Hearthstone, how it's got that total integration. I started messing around with that and trying it. I got a new mount for my WoW character, and it's just Blizzard has this amazing addiction feeding system, and they are top-notch games. I love them, and they're very, very addictive. So I will watch myself so I don't fall into a WoW spiral.
What do you think of their new one, Overwatch?
It looks really cool. It's kind of The gameplay doesn't excite me as much
I felt the
because
same
I'm
way.
less of an action gamer. It's like I love StarCraft 2, but I'm so terrible at it. And I like Diablo a lot, but it's fast paced, and I kind of like the slower pace. Like I actually don't even like DPS and WoW. I don't for WoW players out there, they're going to get bored by my speak in the next few moments. But I never play a DPS class because I was just never into doing the cycles and getting down the rhythm and trying to top the charts. I always play tank or heals because I like being support and having kind of that like step out of gameplay and enabling the raid to happen in the first place. So it's just kind of a different play style I have. Not to say the games are bad. It's just haven't sucked me in as much as playing a druid healer has. So what
Yeah.
about yourself? What games have you been playing?
So I've recently picked up this cool little mobile app called Hoplite. I feel like I'm a little late to the party in hearing about this, but it's a little pixelated thing that's it's kind of it's a roguelike, but it uses a lot of chess-like moves. And I'd been thinking for a while about how to do like a simplified strategy RPG on the phone. Like what would be how do you boil down a strategy RPG to
Hmm.
just be the core essentials? Maybe even make it a puzzle game for mobile. And I played this game and I'm like, wow, these controls would totally work. So it's been super fun playing it. It's like $1.99 on the App Store right now. And it's just a cute little roguelike.
Awesome. Good source of inspiration to always play
Yeah,
games. That's why I have this segment of the show, just to encourage people hey, as you're playing, like, hey, that could be a cool system if applied somewhere else.
definitely.
Very, very cool. If listeners out there want to find more about the show, they can go to beindynow.com where you have past shows, show notes, cool stuff like that. If you want to find more about me, you can go to my blog, tobiahmarks.com, where I have articles useful for game developers, resources, cool stuff like that. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Tobiah Marks. Where can we find more whale food games?
So you can go to whalefoodgames.com or too manysnakes.com. Also Twitter, I'm at whalefoodgames.
Very, very cool. All right. Thank you very much, Jonah, for being on the show.
Thanks, Tobiah.
And for everyone else out there, go out and make some games.